On May 8, 2020, for the third time, Ryan had already caused 2 traffic accidents. He blamed the nervous inhabitants of New Rome who drove recklessly, like monkeys out for his blood-making, walking safer than driving. Fortunately, he had saved, right before passing, the Welcome to New Rome sign at the highway's end, linking the city to the Campania region. Driving his highly customized red Plymouth Fury, Ryan stopped just before a tank truck nearly hit him. From the left dodged a bliss addict meth head, and finally reached New Rome Strip, the city known as the largest metropolis in Italy and the capital of sin for a ravaged Europe, was a sight to behold. Built around the shores of the Gulf of Naples years after Mecrans drones bombed it to oblivion, it boasted the tallest buildings Ryan had seen since the Genome Wars ended. None surpassed the Dynamis Tower north of town, a glass spire symbolizing the company's dominance over the region. Corporate money had built New Rome a city with no gods nor kings, only money. To Ryan's left, the pristine Mediterranean Sea glittered with the sunset, a distant island casting a long shadow on the horizon. To his right, countless casinos, gambling dens, and luxury hostels attracted many tourists. He even glimpsed the famous Colosseum Maximus, a modern replica of the old world's Colosseum. This district truly deserved this name of the Golden Coast. Ryan attracted a few glances from tourists as he drove in his quick-save costume. A metal mouthless mask with 2 rounded glasses for eyes covered his adorable face. Black hair tucked beneath a black top hat, complemented by a navy blue trench coat, purple shirt, blue pants, black gloves, and boots. The outfit was hot and impractical for fighting, but looked amazing, a priority for quick-save. As he moved north toward his destination, Ryan noticed a few eye-catching publicity boards. One portrayed the superheroine Wyvern, a beautiful Amazon woman with shoulder-length black hair, sharp grayish eyes, and a white bodysuit, flexing her muscles with a green potion. In the background, the advertisement promised that with the Hercules elixir, one could achieve what Hercules did in 12 labors in just an afternoon for 100,000 euros only. At Dynamis, Ryan thought everyone wanted to be a genome these days, even a shadow of one, and who could resist superpowers in a can? He hadn't, though he had taken the real stuff, not a cheap knockoff, offering just a fraction of real power. His life had been a roller coaster ever since. Driving past a cliff tourist spot and a Miami-like beach, Ryan reached a tourist district full of bars, nightclubs, and restaurants. The place smelled of drugs and alcohol, but didn't look seedy. The worst neighborhoods were farther north, as he had heard. Having memorized the city's map, Ryan quickly found an unremarkable pub located between an Italian restaurant and a closed nightclub. Parking his car nearby, the courier stepped down and opened his trunk. His belongings were in chaotic disarray. Tools, computers, and weapons formed a mass of metal almost overflowing. From the car, though, none compared to his white rabbit plushie, the most devastating tool in his arsenal. After searching, Ryan found the black briefcase he had been hired to deliver, seized it, closed the trunk, and entered the pub. Inside, the cozy place had 10 tables, only a third occupied. Ryan briefly noticed a Latin man trying to impress his date by levitating a coin in the air, likely wasted $50,000 on a knockoff elixir. A balding, wrinkled old man with tanned skin stood behind the counter, eyeing the newcomer suspiciously. Ryan greeted the barman as a local human and asked if this was Renesco's Jolie Wrangler. The man glared and replied that it was written on the front door, and questioned what Ryan wanted. Ryan noted the bar's title involved both French and English words, while the barman sounded like a true Italian. Multiculturalism again. He then addressed the barman as Renesco and handed him the briefcase, explaining he was hired to deliver it and that it was full of mushrooms and a bomb, though he hadn't opened it. This time Renesco frowned and asked if Ryan was implying something. Ryan introduced himself as Quicksave Immortal, but asked to keep a secret. Someone in the back jeered that Ryan said it loud enough for everyone to hear, prompting laughter from the few clients. Renesco asked if immortality was Ryan's power. Unimpressed, Ryan said it was part of a package deal. Renesco grumbled, seized the briefcase, and said he would inform his boss and Ryan should receive payment soon. Ryan placed a hand on the counter and asked if Renesco had seen a girl named Len, black hair, blue eyes, Marxist Leninist. Renesco shrugged, saying he had never heard of her, and suggested suggested trying a brothel if Ryan was looking for a girl. Ryan replied that Len wasn't that type and guessed she was probably hiding in some underground Kremlin bunker. He then asked if there was any place to buy custom genius tech or homemade items. Renesco suggested Rust Town in the north for the brave, and the junkyard, though it was full of cutthroats and psychos nowadays. He looked Ryan up and down and warned that they would eat him alive. Ryan shrugged as someone entered the bar, bringing a sudden chill to the room. The newcomer called out for Renesco. When Renesco replied, an ice spear tore through his throat, nailing him to the back. While Ryan tried to activate his time stop, but a sharp icicle struck his chest at astonishing speed, piercing his bulletproof jacket and ribs like a spear, and exiting the other side, leaving a gaping hole where his lungs should have been. The room erupted in screams as projectiles shredded tables, and clients alike struggling against the sharp pain. Ryan collapsed on the counter, but managed to glimpse his attacker. The newcomer removed his hoodie, revealing a skinless skeleton-like face with vestigial muscles, skeletal fingers, and frozen eyes. An unnatural chilling mist escaped his mouth, and nasal cavities transforming into ice weapons. He was a genome, possibly even a psycho. The killer rasped that Adam sent his regards. The Latin man at the back tried to telekinetically throw a chair at him, but the hostile genome grew an armor of ice over his bones, and soon after the Spanish man and his date had their faces redrawn in cubic style. Ryan dramatically raised a finger at his murderer, blood flowing from his mouth, vowing to get him on his next save. The undead genome froze him alive with a wave of his hand, and everything went dark. It was May 8th, 2020 for the fourth time, and Ryan was furious. 3 times he had died trying to make this delivery. Then again, that was the consequence of not paying attention. Except for his save point, his powers required conscious activation. His enhanced timing sense didn't kick in until after he had lived through events once already. Ryan had grown accustomed to dying after the first 24 times, but dying so soon, less than 2 hours after setting a save point 3 times in a row, was frustrating. His loops usually lasted days, allowing him to attempt new and interesting stunts, repeating the same events in quick succession. Bored him determined, Ryan entered autopilot, letting his body replicate the actions from his previous save. While his mind wandered, he only regained full consciousness upon reaching the bar. Instead of entering, Ryan stayed in his car, waiting for his killer to appear. The assassin emerged quickly from a street corner, hands in his pockets, his face hidden beneath a hoodie. In New Rome, this crook's unassuming appearance went unnoticed. As he entered the Jolie Wrangler, Ryan moved his car in front of the pub, set an AC/DC song on the radio, and then slammed the accelerator. Pedestrians screamed and leapt aside as the reinforced Plymouth crashed through the Wrangler's entrance, striking the assassin from behind before he could attack. The collision sent the hostile genome crashing against the counter like a deer hit on the road. Ryan quickly scanned the room to ensure no clients were harmed. He had carefully aimed to avoid anyone but the assassin. A Spanish man was holding his terrified girlfriend, too preoccupied to react aggressively. Satisfied, Ryan stepped out and addressed the stunned patrons, introducing himself as Quicksave and joking about his immortality. Renesco shouted he was calling security from behind the counter. Ryan told him not to bother opening his car's trunk to select a weapon. He dismissed the pistol gauntlets as too intimate, the Gauss rifle as too quick, the shotgun as overdone, and the rabbit plushie as too powerful. He chose the baseball bat. Whistling, Ryan approached the assassin, who was rising to his feet using the counter for support. The undead genome hissed angrily, trying to manifest an ice armor as before, but was too stunned to focus. He demanded to know if Ryan was an Auguste. Ryan replied he was just a courier, and quipped about getting the assassin's name. While he still had teeth, the skeleton raised his hand and unleashed a volley of ice shards. Ryan lazily stopped time, silencing the world and freezing the icicles midair in a purple hue he memorized. The pun froze for later. He moved around the attack's path until he stood directly in front of the target. Both clients and the enemy genome remained frozen for 2 seconds. When time resumed, the skeleton kissed the aluminum bat, losing a few teeth in the process. It must have been his first time. Ryan's attack sent the assassin to his knees, followed by a strike that slammed his face into the ground. He beat beat the enemy to the rhythm of Highway to Hell singing to himself. The assassin, still recovering from the car collision and head blow, could not resist. Ryan noticed the frozen blood beneath the bones and vestigial flesh. He shook his head in disgust, comparing the assault to beating up a helpless granny and blaming the assassin for forcing his hand. The undead genome offered no excuse, so Ryan continued the assault. His unnatural resilience allowed him to survive worse injuries, and having killed Ryan once, the courier felt justified in beating him close to death. Suddenly Ryan was ordered to drop his weapons. He turned to see three men in black riot gear aiming energy rifles at him from behind. They surrounded his car, proudly displaying the Ouroboros symbol of the Dynamis Corporation on their chests. Likely private security. A crowd of civilians had gathered outside, watching and taking pictures from a respectful distance. Ryan protested, waving his blood-stained bat in surrender. After delivering a final kick to the assassin, Renesco emerged from behind the counter, furious about his bar. Ryan quickly produced a wad of banknotes worth 50,000 euros from his trench coat, offering it as compensation. Renesco counted the money, conflicted, then told the guards it was enough to cover repairs, and explained the situation. The man on the floor had attacked them, and the other had intervened. One security guard asked Ryan if he had a license. Ryan shook his head, denying being a vigilante. Augusti or company genome. The guard questioned why they, on May 8, 2020, him into custody alongside the assassin. Ryan responded by throwing a bribe at the guard. The security captain caught the wad, counted it while aiming his weapon at Quicksave, and chuckled at the attempt to buy their honor. Ryan threw a larger bribe. The captain accepted the bigger sum, pocketing it among grenades, lowered his rifle, and had his men gently restrain the assassin. After punching him in the gut, he expressed satisfaction at helping make the neighborhood safer. Renesco was reminded to pay his monthly subscription as the guards left without looking back. Renesco asked Ryan if he always carried wads of money. Astonished by the surreal scene, Ryan explained it was a time saver when causing as much collateral damage as he did the baseball bat still dripping with blood. Renesco identified the skeletal attacker as a ghoul, a psycho from the meta gang Elixir addicts who had been hitting places like his recently. He glared at Ryan and his car before ordering him to leave. Ryan handed the briefcase to Renesco, insisting he wouldn't leave until completing the delivery. The barman's eyes flashed with recognition and confusion. Renesco noted that Ryan wasn't paid half of what he had spent in the last minute. Ryan whispered that it wasn't about the money, but boredom. Renesco looked at Ryan silently as the courier whistled, returning to his car and driving into the sunset toward new adventures. Side quest complete. Clothes embodied society's restrictions upon the human spirit, the crushing power of civilization attempting to make the individual fit into the mold by being mostly naked. Ryan reconnected with his creativity, unbound by conformity, while his boxers represented his lingering attachment to his mental stability, preventing him from going completely off the rails. The one time Ryan had worked completely naked, he ended up building his rabbit plushie. His boxers felt comfy and warm, having been made by Len years ago. Having rented a hotel room near the city center, Ryan spent the early morning splitting his time between researching information about New Rome and improving his gadgets. The receptionist gave Quicksave a strange glance upon seeing him move upstairs with his hands full of weapons, but did not call private security. Masked strangers were nothing unusual in this city. Ryan hacked the bedroom's camera to protect his secret identity and avoid panic, as he had a lot of unsafe items in his arsenal. Resting on a chair, Ryan typed on his computer with his toes, a skill he had spent many loops mastering while working on his coil gun with his hands. The client had wired him money for yesterday's delivery with compliments for Ghoul's arrest. Though Ryan cared little about the job, it was just an excuse to travel across Italy in search of new adventures. He had put his endless wandering on hold once he heard Len might be in New Rome. According to Renesco, Ryan should go to Rust Town for information. The local Dynanet described it as New Rome's poor northwest neighborhood. The corporations controlling the city had placed all industrial plants there, turning the area into a dumpster and building a wall to prevent vagrants from moving into other districts. The receptionist mentioned the junkyard, an old coal mine transformed into an open landfill where many rogue geniuses and adventurers exchanged items. Perhaps Len was among them. Someone knocked on Ryan's bedroom window. Ryan glanced at it and saw a woman waving her hand from the other side. She greeted him and asked if they could talk for a minute. Ryan's room was on the 10th floor with no fire exit. He grabbed his mask and hat, put them on, and told her she was violating his secret identity. She replied that he didn't have one, and that according to his file he had never done anything to hide it. Ryan asked if he had a file, and overtaken by happiness, inquired how he was described. She said deranged but reliable. She eyed him from head to toe through the glass and asked if he intended to put on other clothes. Ryan chuckled and said no, affirming he would always stand against oppressors. The woman frowned and knocked on the window again, more frustrated. This time Ryan rose from his chair, opened the window with one hand, and kept his coil gun aimed at her with the other. With a better view, Ryan immediately recognized the woman from a publicity board he had seen yesterday. She floated in midair thanks to translucent dragonfly wings flapping at high speed on her back, her hands on her waist making her look as graceful as a fairy. Unlike bugs, she made no sound while hovering. She introduced herself as Wyvern, wearing a sleeveless skin-tight white uniform with Dynamis D-shaped logo on the left and a silver star surrounded by golden laurel on the right. She appeared to be in her mid-20s to early 30s and was quite striking. She wanted to thank Ryan for Ghoul's arrest the previous day. Ryan responded politely. He began to close the window, but Wyvern caught it and kept it open. Ryan, aware she could bench press a school bus even partially transformed, did not resist. Wyvern asked what he was doing in town and if she could call him quick. Save Ryan agreed and explained he was a courier delivering mail no matter how many people wanted him dead. Wyvern asked if the Augusti had hired him as muscle, noting the place he defended was one of their fronts and speculating they might have hired him to defend their turf from the meta gang. Ryan denied this, saying he beat the geriatric disaster because he was in the way of completing his side quest. Wyvern made a strange face, unable to understand his jargon. She asked if he had heard of a girl his age named Len, black hair, blue eyes, Marxist-Leninist. Ryan confirmed the description, explaining that although it was probably a dirty word in this city of unbridled capitalism, it was true. Wyvern said she had never heard of Len, but offered to look at their files and asked if that was why Ryan was in New Rome. Ryan said yes, adding that Len was beautiful, kind, and his best friend, and that he had been searching for her forever. Wyvern smiled and said she would help if she could, believing she could help him a great deal. She revealed she belonged to a group called Il Miglior, which Ryan had heard of, the corporate superheroes who were official protectors of New Rome and modern celebrities owned and controlled by Dynamis. Wyvern explained that Il Miglior was always on the lookout for new talents. Despite Ryan's reputation for collateral damage, he possessed an extremely useful superpower and had not dabbled in reprehensible enterprises nor closely associated with wanted criminals since he had stopped Ghoul before a killing spree. She believed he had his heart in the right place. Ryan asked if she wanted him to audition for a movie, joking that he had only tried theater once and it wasn't funny. Wyvern laughed, admitting she wished they did fewer commercials and more arrests, but said they did their best to protect citizens. She invited Ryan to visit their HQ to see if he matched their organization after his stunt with Ghoul. He would need people to have his back. Ryan replied that he could take care of himself, feeling a bit insulted. Wyvern insisted that the meta were not reasonable like the Augusti. They were a roving band of psychos, and since Ryan had beaten one of their own, their boss, Adam, 8 people. Ryan joked that Adam must have a lot on his plate. Wyvern did not like the joke. Her smile strained and her wings slowed. Ryan said he would think about it if he ever got sidetracked on his main quest. Wyvern frowned and looked sideways. Ryan noticed an earplug in her left ear, though he couldn't hear anything. She said understood, though not to Ryan, and handed him a business card telling him to visit if he changed his mind. Ryan accepted the card and said sure. Wyvern told him to take care. She then flew away, her wings moving so fast they became impossible for the human eye to notice, making no sound except for the wind they produced. She was gone within the blink think of an eye moving north and accelerating until she reached near supersonic speed. The sound frequency of her wings must have been inaudible to humans or governed by abnormal physics the courier memorized that observation for. Later, once alone, Ryan closed the window and returned to his task. But no sooner had he sat back in his chair than his computer received a vocal communication demand. The genome immediately recognized the caller as the same person who had ordered the Renesco delivery. He lazily opened the vocal channel with his left toe and answered, "Quick save deliveries, what can I do for you?" An encrypted voice on